Hey everyone, this is Tankenstein, and in this video I'll go over every single difference between arcade and realistic mode for tanks. I was going to make mention of planes and ships in this video, but there are so many differences in just tanks alone and that are truly unique to only tanks that I had to make a totally separate video, again, just for tanks. That being said, don't want to waste your guys' time, so let's get into it. So that all being said, I'll start off with the differences shown right here in the main menu first because you can see these first, and then I will switch to test drive and in-match differences. So that said, let's just start off with some arcade differences. And as you can see here, I have a 40.7 degree per second to rotation speed, as well as a 1259 horsepower engine and 89 kilometer per hour top speed in the RU251. Now this is incredible because in realistic and really for how it was in real life, I had a 21.6 degree per second to rotation speed. So as you can see, the stats are really exaggerated with arcade and not real at all, thus arcade versus realistic. 660 horsepower, so you have about half the horsepower and only 9 kilometers per hour top speed lower. However, the difference there is that you have half the horsepower and thus significantly lower acceleration. So you will be going at a significantly lower average speed, even though the top speed is only 9 kilometers per hour lower. Additionally, crew stats are also different. So this is something a lot of people kind of forget between realistic and arcade, and I am again an arcade right here, and really the main differences are field repair. So as you can see, you can have a top of 12.5 seconds, which is really nice, and gunning. So you have targeting. Again, this is directly related to rotation speed with targeting, range finding, also when it comes to accuracy over distance. So just look at these values right here. And then if I go to realistic, it does change fairly substantially. So the best speed that I can have, my top speed when it comes to field repair at all is 17.86 seconds. So it goes up by around 5 seconds. And when it comes to gunning, so targeting, for example, the best I can have is 24 meters per or degrees per second. And also with this, it is significantly worse. So crew stats are dramatically affected when you're going from arcade to realistic, which again, at least in part, does show in some of these stats. And also, Silver Lion and RP rewards are actually substantially lower in arcade. However, the repair cost tends to be a bit lower as well. So as you can see at the bottom, the max vehicle research efficiency and also the Silver Lion reward, it's 552 for RP and 270 for Silver Lions. It doesn't really change too much on that screen for RP. However, it is different in game, but it does go up substantially for Silver Lions by about 150%. And even for non-premium vehicles, if I were to go over to the Tiger 2 right here, it goes from 210 to a total of 225. So there is a difference there regardless. And additionally, between arcade and realistic, there are sometimes large differences in VR, with the Leopard 1 really just being a great example. So I'll go switch to the Leopard 1 right now and switch to my arcade lineup. So this is more or less my arcade lineup for 7.3. And there are huge differences in VR. So if you feel that you have a great lineup in arcade and you might want to use that in realistic, double check it because it might make your other vehicles have a major disadvantage. So again, this is a pretty decent 7.3 lineup. These can all more or less tango with 7.3 vehicles. If I were to switch to realistic, all of a sudden I've got 7.7 and no other vehicles here are above 6.7. So just watch out, switch it out, and I'll go over this a little bit more later, but you will be able to actually set your lineup with vehicles, air vehicles in arcade, or realistic, I mean to say, whereas arcade, you have a different way of actually getting to use air vehicles in match. So here in test drive mode, you will start to see huge differences between arcade and realistic because ultimately these differences go well beyond just stats. So this is arcade test drive, and I'll show you exactly how you can tell in just a moment if you do not know already. And really, again, there are huge differences. And I'll start with this. So vehicles have an aim assist function in arcade that will show where the round will go, and also if you're close enough, if you have a chance of penetrating the armor, with green being good, yellow meaning bad or a decent chance but really pretty much a bad chance, and red meaning no chance at all. And this is a very advanced vehicle here, the RU-251, insofar as this vehicle is concerned, the T-26. So it will be able to shoot right through it like that. Now, if I were to go out a little bit further, let's say to that T-44, as you can see, I lose the green, yellow, red indicator because it is too far away. Now, this T-34 right here still has it, but there is a chance that I could deflect off of it, or like that, it ricochets, even though it is a heat round. So it's a really, really useful tool for destroying tanks, especially, well, obviously, only in arcade. So definitely use it. And as you can see here, I just switched to realistic, and right away there are some major differences. So in arcade, vehicles are highlighted by having their name above them. Now this makes it really easy to see most vehicles, especially being that vehicles spotted by allies also often show up like this. Enemies will also show up on the mini-map if they are visible to either you or the enemy. Now in arcade, or in realistic, this is totally different. So enemies, as you can see here, are not highlighted in any way, whether they're air or ground. You must always keep an eye open to find them. It makes it much more difficult to find tanks in bushes. Enemies will not be shown on the minimap. This is a little bit of an exception because this is test drive, but normally they will not be shown on the minimap. And really, this is extremely hazardous, as people oftentimes mark enemies on the minimap and they aren't really there, or they've since moved on. So as you can see, additionally, the aiming reticle is gone. You really have to kind of rely on your own wits. So this is a fairly easy target, being that it's really close. So if I shoot, it'll kill it. However, further out, this T-44, for example, and you can kind of aim it up by looking at the left side there. So you see the 4, 8, 12, 16, those notches. That will help you to determine exactly how far up you have to aim in order to hit that range. So some vehicles have a better range finding system than this. However, being that I more or less know these ranges, I should be able to shoot this with relative ease. So as you can see there, penetrated right through the front glacis. However, it does get more difficult as you go out, and I'm not even going to attempt that shot. Oh, maybe I will. Oh, look at that. I hit it. So that being said, there are some major differences between arcade and realistic. Additionally, vehicles control much differently as well. So as I mentioned before with the stats, it is significantly slower to move this vehicle. In realistic, it does not nearly really just function nearly as well. It's not nearly as agile. And one other interesting thing I feel like most people will forget is that between realistic and arcade, in realistic, your tank crews will have a different voice, a different language that they speak depending on the nation of the tank that you're playing in. So a good example here is with the artillery. I'll just fire it on myself. I don't know if you could hear that, but it does speak German, whereas in arcade it is totally different. It will speak the language that you choose in your settings. So as you can see here, I switch back to arcade. I'll just show you the major agility difference that you're going to get between arcade and realistic. And this is a very fast tank already, so the differences are pronounced. If you have a slower tank, they will not be as big, but they are still there. So as you can see, this accelerates up to 40 kilometers per hour in just a few seconds and is much quicker. I can just drift around corners with this. It doesn't really drop below 20, whereas before I was struggling to stay over 20 with the same maneuvers. And additionally, the pilot voices are different. So as you can see that, even though I'm driving a German tank, it does still speak English. And with artillery just as well, it's English, whereas in the German tank in realistic, it stays to that. So you might have a more difficult time deciphering exactly what your tank crew is talking about when you are in realistic, but I'm sure you'll get used to it and you'll just learn if there's a warning to either move or check the mini-map. And insofar as the gameplay itself is concerned, in arcade, you can only have a maximum of 3 spawns. This does not include any aircraft spawn, but you will only be able to get into a maximum of 3 tanks. Additionally, as I mentioned just there, you can have enough qualifying actions, and these actions are destroying enemy tanks, planes, assisting enough teammates, doing objectives. You will be able to fly either a fighter, an attacker, or a bomber. These are all randomly chosen once you do choose the plane type. So for example, if you choose a bomber, you may receive a B-57A or a B-57B, with the B typically being equipped with more bombs. If you select a bomber, for example, as well, you may get the IL-28, which could only have a single bomb. And the same goes for other choices. In fact, actually, at higher BRs, I do tend to go for attackers. And the reason being is because they do tend to be equipped with anywhere between around 36 to over 100 rockets, which is incredible versus tanks. You only have around 40 seconds to do what you want with your plane before you are kicked out of it and sent back to your regular ground vehicle. You can additionally get helicopters, but that's only at the highest BRs. This said, they are also only started while you have a tank on the ground, so make sure you're in a safe spot, otherwise your tank could be destroyed while you are in the air. And what I mean by that is that specifically, you can only get into aircraft while your tank is alive. So if you've expended all 3 of your tanks and you still have enough to get into a bomber, fighter, or an attack aircraft, it won't matter because you cannot spawn into the tank and then from there get into the air. Damage models in arcade are also more forgiving. Additionally, if you have a destroyed cannon breach, for example, you will still be able to fire, eventually. You may have misfires, but it will eventually happen. The same goes for actual cannon damage. Vehicles will be from all different countries that you play with. So you could play a 5.0 BR match with Americans, Germans, Japanese, and every other nation on the same side. Whereas in realistic, this is a bit different. I'll go over that in just a moment. Additionally, artillery strikes are earned in a way similar to earning plane usage. So by getting these so-called success tokens, that's what I like to call them, you can earn more artillery strikes, up to a maximum of 3 that you can hold at any given time. And you can only use these with medium and light tanks and also main battle tanks. Heavy tanks are ineligible for artillery strikes. Additionally, you can replenish your crew whenever you'd like, so long as you have crew replenishment either researched and available or just available for whatever reason. Maybe you have a premium tank. But that being said, it would also be researched. Now, for realistic, you can spawn into more than 3 vehicles, or less, depending on how many spawn points you receive during the course of the match. These are based on positive actions taken to help your team win. Additionally, instead of the arcade mode where you can select a plane based on the amount of success tokens, so to speak, that you earn, you can bring your own planes to the match in realistic. And they should always line up with your tank's BR. So try not to, for example, bring a 10 BR plane in a 3 BR tank match, because it will not give you an advantage. Rather, it will make your tanks be utterly useless, because you'll be facing very high BR tanks with low BR tanks on your side. And also, you will be able to have your own loadout on your plane, and you can also land it as well. So that's also very important. And just so long as you are able to stay in the sky. And as I said before, in realistic, as with tank spawns, these do cost spawn points and oftentimes are significantly more expensive with spawn points than tanks and other ground vehicles are. Additionally, in realistic, damage models are, well, a bit more realistic. That damage cannon breach that you had before in arcade will not allow you to fire in realistic. Additionally, you will only be able to play with teammates in vehicles that are considered allied with your nation. If it is World War II era, the Americans will play with the British and French, the Germans might play with the Italians, so on and so forth. There are exceptions where this occurs. Last night, for example, I played a joint German and Russian match that I believe was around World War II era. So it can happen, but it is fairly rare. And typically teams stay around. They are formed around national lines. Also, artillery, as you may have seen, is on a timer rather than having good boy points, so to speak. You will have a flat timer that just resets, really not based on gameplay, but rather just, again, based on time. And additionally, finally, probably the biggest or one of the other big differences that a lot of people don't know about is that crew can only be replaced while sitting on an occupied objective if you have the crew replenishment researched. Well, I did forget to say one last thing. If you play arcade, just know that never, ever tell people about it. For whatever reason, people hate arcade in this game. I find it's an enjoyable experience, but I guess it's less than for a lot of people who play realistic and simulator. Whereas if you play realistic, people will still hate you, but they won't hate you because you play realistic. Rather, they'll hate you because you play War Thunder. And people who play War Thunder hate other people who play War Thunder. That being said, thanks so much for watching my video, guys. I hope you guys learned a thing or two, maybe figured some stuff out between realistic and arcade that maybe you didn't know before. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Please remember, like, comment, subscribe. Either way, I'm signing out for tonight. Again, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.